Hello, this is Stephen Allen. Yes, we are back with yet another Batman 66 episode review, and today we'll be reviewing the episode Louie the Lilac, which will be the first debut of Louie the Lilac. So without any further ado, let's pop straight into the review. We begin our episode in Gotham City's police headquarters, where Commissioner Gordon is informed by Chief O'Hara that the Flower Inn children are ready for their annual Flower Inn, but there are no flowers, as someone has cornered the flower market and stolen every single, essentially, flower in Gotham City. We then cut to our villain for this episode, Louie the Lilac, at his hideout along with his men, where he is planning to devise to take over the flower children movement, as he sees them as the future leaders of the country. With them in his power, he'll be able to control Gotham City, to loot and plunder, and then the world. They then head to this flower inn to go to a Princess Primrose, as she is arguably the biggest leader of the flower children movement. We then go to Gotham City Park, where we see the flower children all there in attendance. It is revealed that this Princess Primrose real name is actually Thelma Jones, and she goes way back to college, where she was best friends with Barbara Gordon. Barbara Gordon rolls up and they strike a conversation. Just as that happens, Louie the Lilac turns up in his flowermobile along with his henchmen, throwing out flowers. He then uses his lilac spray on Princess Primrose to freeze her and essentially bring her into the flowermobile and drive off. It is then revealed that the flowers have been thrown were actually fake. We then do the opening credits, and when we get back, Louie the Lilac has returned to his hideout with Princess Primrose. We then find Barbara Gordon in Commissioner Gordon's office, essentially talking to her father, explaining the events. However, he doesn't think that it should be noteworthy. And this gives us a bit of insight to the time period. You see, when you look at this, the flower children was essentially the generation before the hippies and yippies of the early 70s. And this was way before the movement got involved in drugs, and they were looked down upon because they were going against the establishment that was essentially controlling things at the time. And as a result, because they didn't fit with their views and ideals, they essentially were abusive with their power towards these people, and eventually the flower children will form into the hippie and the yippie movement, where it got involved in drugs. Its original movement only wanted to spread love, peace, not war, and to bring an end to the Vietnam War, was all lost in translation. Anyway, let's get back to it. Realize that she's getting nowhere with Gordon, with her father. She turns to essentially the bat phone and calls up Batman to explain about the whole thing, and he agrees to help. We then cut back to Louie the Lilac in his hideout, where he's talking to Princess Primrose, but she's revealed that Barbara Gordon was at the rally. Fearing that maybe something could happen, and possibly maybe have Commissioner Gordon on his trail, he orders one of his henchmen to go Barbara Gordon's apartment and essentially check out and see what she might know. He's also put Princess Primrose once again under his lilac spray curse, and essentially locked her up and told one of his other henchmen to keep an eye on him. He then plans to go to the back alley of police headquarters to the Batmobile to plan his big scheme to finally get rid of Batman. Just as that's happening, the flower children are angry at what has happened and then head to police headquarters to stir up a bit of commotion. Just as that happened, we cut to Commissioner Gordon's office, where Batman and Robin are there and explain why they're there and how Batman... And I like this scene for a few reasons. First off, Batman says that Barbara's just curious and concerned about her friend, and it's natural and it's brave and it's a good thing that she would do this. But most importantly, what do they know about Louie the Lilac? And they said very little. Now that kind of bugs me a bit, because in the end episode, they said he's a well-known notorious gangster, but here they said very little. So I guess maybe they might not know him as only by reputation, but nothing really personally. That's my view of it. Anyway, Gordon gets a phone call from his secretary saying that the flower children are outside and wish to talk to him. Batman and Robin want to make their leave, fearing they might be mobbed in police headquarters. They also reveal that, despite their odd appearance, remember, these kids only want to essentially spread the word of love and peace with flowers. Essentially, this is what I like about Adam West's Batman. He can judge the movement by its own merits and try to explain it to the establishment and saying it's not the worst thing in the world. And this might be the first time where it's actually more blatantly open. We then find Batman and Robin essentially go down the building into the Batmobile, where Louie the Lilac has planted a clue to go to a flower shop. Just as they drive off, Louie the Lilac then calls his female assistant and tells her about the Batman and Robin coming and to be prepared. We then cut to the Barbara at her house, or her apartment I should say, where she was concerned that someone was following her, where she comes face to face with one of Louie's goons. Just as that happening, we then cut to Batman and Robin at the shop, where they first meet Lila and the flowers, but are quickly apprehended. We then cut back to Gordon calling up on the bat phone, trying to find out where Batman is, and reveals that basically doesn't know where Batman is, and he's concerned as he's been trying to get in contact with Barbara, but nothing's coming of it. We then cut back to Batman and Robin in Louie the Lilac's hideout, where they are being fed by man-eating lilacs, and Louie then puts Princess Primrose under his lilac spray again. They plan to guide the flower children to get control of the movement. We then cut back to Barbara's apartment, where she turns up as Batgirl and scares the Hood away. Just as the Hood also decided to run because he sees Gordon as well and decides to run. Barbara then disappears, comes back into her Barbara persona, and tells Gordon everything's all right. Just as that happened, Alfred turns up and tells her where Louie the Lilac could possibly be at one of his hideouts, and suggests meet there. Just as that's happening, we see that Louie the Lilac and Princess Primrose are out with the flower children trying to get the movement under his control. However, there's something about the lilac spray. It wears off, and it's wearing off big time. Scared, he ditches Princess Primrose and quickly drives off, but the flower children are angry and follow him. We then cut back to Louie Lilac's hideout, where Batman and Robin are trapped being fed by man-eating lilacs. Batman manages to get out of the death trap just as Louie the Lilac and his henchmen come in. Louie then orders his henchmen to fight, and the fight is pretty fun. Not groundbreaking, but it's really fun. And Batgirl then joins in, turning the tide, with Batman and Robin winning the day. Louie the Lilac is about to run off, but he sees that Batgirl has a can of powdering mildew and essentially sprays poison in his face. And it looks like it killed him. Just as that's happened, the goons run away. Just as that's happening, Louie the Lilac gets up and basically he's not dead, but he's looking terribly. He then quickly runs off into the man-eating lilac, swearing that he will one day get control of the flower generation and the flower children and become the leader of the world. I love that how Milton Berle just says that line so well. But when he hears that the lilac children are outside, he is scared for his life and runs off. Batman tells Robin to calm down the flower children, but he looks around and sees Batgirl's left, and is wondering where Batgirl is, as he always does usually at the end of these types of episodes. It is then revealed that Louie the Lilac's men has been apprehended and the flower children have been calmed down. Batman and Robin then plan to quickly get Louie the Lilac, but notice outside the window some strange characters. Egghead's back, and this time is teamed up with a person named a female accomplice, or new villain named Olga. Realizing that there's going to be trouble, but first they need to get Louie. And that's where we end our episode. So far, I like the cast really here well. How Gordon talks to Barbara about not being interested with the flower children is what the conservatives establishment at the time always felt with like the hippie movements, and was a kind of a precursor to that. Again, it should be noted, and I like how Alfred had that little scene to help Barbara. It's clear that Alfred is really a main tool in Batgirl's arsenal for crime fighting, and I really like how she's personally involved because her friend's in danger. I really like that. Also, I like how Batman is very blunt about the movement, Again, when you look at them, you think hippies. Well, that's the thing. This was the flower children, not the hippies yet. This was the movement before it got involved in drugs. It would later, but this is what they liked at the time. So if you look at the episode now, you could view that, but it's not. I like how he's explaining to the establishment that, you know, they just want to create peace and love and do it in a very strange way. Granted, that's all they want to spread, love and peace. And the villain kind of wants to corrupt this movement for his own end. And that villain is Louie the Lilac, portrayed by Milton Berle. Now, Louie the Lilac has always been one of my favorite villains. Not top 10, he was definitely an honorable mention. He was one of my absolute favorite villains during the show, Now, good news is he will come back, and I honestly like him. The clothing, he's a real gangster who's obsessed with power and essentially wealth, like most gangsters. But he has a gimmick of flowers. Now, he may not be seen as threatening, and people often would say that Milton Berle was probably miscast. I disagree. I thought that he was great cast. Would I like him to be more threatening? Well, yeah, but I can enjoy the villain for what it is. Also, it's just something about the design of him, and honestly, a person wanting to control a movement for his own ends is pretty genius. Though you could say this episode could have gone in a different direction or differently written, and I can point that out on so many occasions. But I personally think that Louie the Lilac was a really great villain addition to Season 3. Also, I like how for next week's we got Eggheads back, and this time teaming up with Olga, Queen of the Bessarabian Cossacks, and she looks familiar, though you can't probably see due to this blurred picture. That is portrayed by Anne Baxter, who we might recognize as Zelda the Great from Season 1. So she's finally come back for a new character. I can't wait to see how these two play off each other in the next episode. Louie the Lilac for me is a fun episode. Now, I can admit it's flawed, heavenly, and I will admit it's kind of in the category it's bad, it's good. People often view this episode as one of the weakest episodes of the series, and people often view Louie the Lilac as one of the worst villains of the series. Now, I don't think he's that bad personally. I really enjoy him heavily, and that's probably because of my bias for gangster characters. But then again, we've had mobster characters in the series before, like Harry, but Louie is a bit colourful gangster, and that's probably why I like him so much. And that's all I gotta say. I guess this episode comes to a personal taste, and I can enjoy it. I can admit its faults and its flaws, but I can enjoy it for the entertainment value that it brings. There we have it. That was Louie the Lilac. Don't worry, Louie will be back for one more round in this season, and of course that means we'll have more fun with Uncle Milton. I still can't believe they managed to get him on the show to play a villain. Now, to be fair, he appeared way back in Season 2, but I'm surprised they got him nonetheless. So join us next time where Batman, Robin, and Batgirl will going up against Egghead, and of course, a brand new villain, Olga, Queen of the Bessarabian Cossacks. Want to know more about her? Tune in next time to the same Steven Hour, the same Steven channel, ladies and gentlemen. So long for now.